When people hear the term water level, generally that's followed with a resounding disappointed sigh. Since the early days, water levels or water areas in video games have been a nice way to spice up the gameplay, show off some neat aesthetics or creature designs, or add some new mechanics to a game. Oftentimes, however, these have been met with emotions ranging from visceral hate to, they're fine I guess, from the player base. However, most people can agree that these are generally the worst parts of their respective games. Paradoxically though, these have been known to have some of the most beautiful visuals and some of the best soundtracks of their respective games. And much like water areas in real life, water areas in video games also have the unique ability to invoke a myriad of different vibes. These areas can range from calm and serene to tremendous anxiety, and sometimes even, oh shit, this is terrifying, what the fuck is that? Get me out of here. Do they deserve all of the hate that they get, or do we as a collective gamer just not give them enough credit? Well, today I'm going to take a look at some notable water areas, levels, or video games about water, and try and dive into what makes them so interesting to talk about. Also, hey, if you like that pun, you should consider hitting the subscribe button for more of them. Guess you could say that self-plug went swimmingly. Really made a splash with it.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Alright, puns aside, let's talk about some water in video games. Alright, as I do with these types of videos, let's start at the beginning with Mario 1, as this was one of the first games to implement water areas in video games. As we all know, Mario games are known for their tight controls and precise movement, and with enough practice you can master the movement of these games, having each jump flow seamlessly into the next while you complete these platforming gauntlets. That is, until you get to World 2-2, where you're introduced to the first water level of the game. Remember earlier when I was talking about the fluid movement of these games? Yeah, throw all that shit out the window, instead have some slow moving water controls that grind the pace of the game to a crawl and handle like you're trying to play the game with 1000 ping. Not only is the movement not as fun, the enemies themselves are more troublesome to fight as well. Between how slowly you move and the unpredictable movements of the enemies, oftentimes when I played these levels I would choose not to engage with them at all, and that's saying something when half the game is jumping on enemies. In Donkey Kong Country, you can't even fight enemies underwater, and on top of that, while not as bad as some, you still don't move or dodge as well underwater, making them kind of miserable without a certain item that fixes these problems. This all gets compounded even further when you start adding elements of realism to the mix. I know when I play video games, the first thing I'm trying to do is mimic the real-life anxiety of drowning. Developers around this time started tinkering with adding elements of realism to underwater areas in video games, such as the need for oxygen. Like, yeah, it doesn't exactly make sense that this Italian man can breathe underwater, unless Mario is secretly a fish person, but hey, that's just a theory. A game Sorry, I've just always really wanted to say that. Anyway, the addition for oxygen makes sense both logically and from a game mechanics standpoint to add a bit more of a challenge and variety in game mechanics to these areas, but I don't know if stapling a timer on how long you can stay underwater for really makes the game any more immersive, and in most cases it certainly doesn't make it more fun. If anything, having to come up for air just makes these sections and levels annoying to navigate and tedious to play. Maybe the best and most infamous example of this is in Sonic the Hedgehog. Just like earlier when I was talking about water mechanics slowing the pacing of the game down and making the controls feel sluggish, well the same thing happens here, but to an even worse degree since the whole point of the game is to go fast. On top of that, now you can drown if you're underwater too long, with the cherry on top being that drowning is accompanied by this music that I'm pretty sure gave me lifelong anxiety. All of these elements mix together to become the perfect cocktail of clunky game mechanics, where in some cases I just want to skip anything having to do with it. It didn't fare much better in most cases when the games made the jump to 3D. So thus far, making water controls that don't feel like you're committing a hate crime on your controller is hard enough when you only have 4 directions to go, like in the case of these early 2D platformers. But it's even worse when you have full 360-degree movement in a 3D space. Now you have even more directions to flounder about, and you have to worry about how the camera is going to behave, which presents a whole slew of issues in itself. The one that I always think of off the top of my head is Mario 64, which in its defense, the water controls don't actually handle that bad. However, compared to how great the rest of the game is, with its near mathematical precision, it's still leagues below by comparison. And much like its predecessors, you only have a limited amount of time underwater, so you have to stop whatever it is that you're doing and come up for air eventually. Or replenish your oxygen using coins, somehow. Is this the future that late-stage capitalism wants? All in all, it's slower, less precise, and truthfully more of a mild annoyance than an actual gameplay addition or challenge, but trust me, there's far worse implementations of water levels. While we're on that, drop your favorite or least favorite areas in the comments. I'd like to hear what others think of them and some fun examples. There are many examples of these janky early 3D water levels and how they're widely considered the worst parts of their respective games. Just to list a few, 40 Fathoms from Tomb Raider, Bats' Tower from Conker's Bad Fur Day, Clanker's Cavern from Banjo, and many more, all of which suffer from many of the same kinds of issues as Mario 64. But maybe none are as infamous and widely hated as the Water Temple from Ocarina of Time. This area is considered bad for many reasons: the almost offensively slow ascending and descending speed of Link in water, the confusing raising and lowering of water levels to even navigate the dungeon, and the fact that you'll spend more time on the menu screen changing out your boots than the amount of time that I've seen the sun for this entire year. All of these elements just make the temple more frustrating and tedious than challenging or fun, I'd say, and it's one of those segments in video games that just kill all momentum I have to play the game. And while Ocarina of Time is still one of my favorite games, when I get to this part I kinda just want to turn the game off. They remedied a lot of these problems in its sequel Majora's Mask by overhauling the swimming controls with a Zora Mask. No longer do you have to open and close menus to ascend and descend. No more slowly meandering through the water like my geriatric grandfather. We are a dolphin now, bitch. Another one that I often look back on and cringe is Aquatic Mine from Sonic Adventure 2. This is a water level where you have to use radar to find shards of a Master Emerald as Knuckles, and once again raise and lower water levels in order to unlock and navigate sections of flooded tunnels. The timing of these can be very tight, and without the item that lets you breathe underwater, this section kind of really sucks. All in all, developers seem to have figured out that people don't care for the sluggish movement and the inconvenience of having to backtrack in order to not drown, which in my opinion are some of the biggest factors that give these areas a bad reputation. However, these are not the only examples of developers trying to remedy that. The frog suit in Mario 3 or the shell in Mario Galaxy both let you handle in water much more precisely and swiftly. Same with the previously mentioned Donkey Kong Country adding in Guard the Swordfish, allowing you to finally be able to take out enemies in water and glide through the water quickly. All of these power-ups share the common trait of basically slapping a band-aid solution on movement in water, a problem that only exists because the movement and core gameplay of these areas just isn't that fun to begin with. That's not to say that it can't be done well, which I'll get to in the games about water section, but it heavily depends on many outside factors since the movement and other aspects of these areas are just generally unfun, and the point of video games, for the most part, is to be fun. So what, Meatman? Are all water levels just inherently bad? Well, no, not exactly. Sure, when I play Mario 64, Jolly Roger Bay isn't exactly my favorite level to play. I wouldn't say it's the most fun. I'd much rather be racing a penguin than slowly playing grab ass with this eel, but the color palette is undeniably gorgeous and the music is absolutely top notch. One of the best of the whole game in my opinion. What I remember more about these areas than anything, the funky controls, the tedious backtracking and slow movement, or even lifelong irrational fears, is the absolutely fantastic ambience that generally accompanies them. The aquatic ambience, if you will. These areas, despite making up a relatively small percentage of their respective games, generally tend to have some of the best and most varied visuals and best soundtracks of the whole game. For example, whenever a new game comes out, what's the first thing that they usually show to flaunt the graphical fidelity? That's right, the water. And man, these can be absolutely beautiful, almost photorealistic in some cases. My fascination with video game water started way back with the opening to Kingdom Hearts. That shit blew me away all those years ago, and the series continues to do so with their water and their cutscenes being absolutely insane. For another example, look no further than Minecraft, where a lot of the mods, shaders, and texture packs exist to make the water as realistic and beautiful as possible. Ironically, setting your CPU on fire while trying to make the water cooler. But I'd say the game that pioneered this strategy was Wave Race for the 64, by having this unparalleled for the time water graphics and physics that honestly still hold up fairly well today. It's actually super neat how they did it using a relatively small amount of polygons, and this was way back in 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Fun fact, he started sailing because he played Wave Race and liked the water so much that he wished it was a real thing so he could also race the waves. As a more modern day example of this, my go-to game is Sea of Thieves. This game with its almost cel-shaded art style looks absolutely gorgeous and just oozes the feeling of adventure. I don't think I've quite enjoyed traversing water in a video game as much as I do with the simple act of sailing between islands of this one. The splash of the waves, the sound of the sea, it's all just so well done visually and from a sound design standpoint that I just want to stop what I'm doing and watch it. That's why half my time in this game is spent fishing and just watching the waves. Maybe my favorite Mario game to date because of the peak vibes of it is Mario Sunshine, a game all about water. When I boot this game up, I feel like I'm on summer vacation in a tropical setting. The game itself plays like every other Mario, and the setting isn't as diverse as the mixed bag of worlds of other games, because let's face it, almost every level is the beach level. But that doesn't stop each area from feeling unique and giving me a different feeling when playing them. Rico Harbor felt like a bustling, busy harbor, Gelato Beach is a relaxing tourist destination, and I personally think that Serena Beach nails the feeling of winding down after a long day and is one of my favorite water areas in a video game full stop. The lighting here is just gorgeous. But being beautiful isn't all that water can be. No, water in video games is a versatile tool. Much like water in real life, it can be absolutely terrifying or mysterious. I mean, we've only explored about 5% of Earth's water, so we know shockingly little about this almost alien world and what kind of strange creatures inhabit it just below the surface. And video games capture this feeling of mystery and terror so well. I remember the first time I saw the opening to Bioshock 1 and how absolutely insane that initial elevator ride was. Seeing Rapture for the first time on the ride down was so cool I wished I could just hop out and explore the ocean floor. It's mysterious and intriguing, slightly spooky, but overall just captivating. Sure, being that far underwater with no help from the surface, and the splicers around every corner waiting to kill you is a claustrophobic nightmare, but I wanted to keep exploring it. That's how well done the world building in that game was. There's another really well done bit in the game Inside, where you have to platform across this flooded area, where if you go into the water you're chased by this grudge-looking girl who swims much faster than you, which is tremendously anxiety-inducing enough, but if you're caught, you're dragged underwater and you drown, which is just terrifying to think about. And while these examples are good, I don't think they're the best games that embody these feelings. For me personally, I think that spot goes to a game that I've talked about before on this channel, a little horror game called Soma. Much of Soma takes place in claustrophobic labs located under the sea, so naturally, most of what you'll be seeing is the inside of the destroyed labs, which are very cool. But the parts of the game I want to focus on today are just outside the labs. There's a few sections where you venture out into the crushing depths of the abyss. This happens a few times throughout the game, where you have to walk on the seafloor between the research facilities, during which time you're encouraged to stay near the lights, otherwise you'll be attacked by the various species of mutated fish. Outside of these small areas is complete darkness. Cleverly, the mutated anglerfish will mimic the lights and attack you when you get close. These areas really portray the terrifying oppressive darkness of the ocean floor so well. The darkness that seemingly stretches on forever, teeming with all sorts of life that could kill you, lurking just past the safety of the small amount of light given to you. Only getting glimpses of the gigantic mutated fish and the disempowerment that comes with being so far out of your element in the deepest parts of the abyss. Really, I think underwater horror is just such an underutilized idea. We need more games like this. I think it owes a lot of what makes it terrifying to the first-person perspective, which leads really nicely into the next section. A solution I've noticed for the aforementioned problems with video game water is when games use a first-person perspective for swimming. For example, swimming in something like Subnautica or Minecraft even feel completely different than swimming in something like, say, Uncharted. The first-person point of view really feels fluid in terms of controls and in my humble opinion, makes the swimming more immersive, which is one of the biggest strengths of water in video games. In that regard, it finally feels to me like more of a gameplay addition, rather than an annoying gimmick that you have to slog through. Back to what I was saying earlier, Subnautica has many parts that you could consider spooky or beautiful, and that's all wrapped up in one immersive experience. These problems are also fixed when the game is almost entirely about water. These generally don't tend to have the same issues as games that only feature small water sections. A recent favorite of mine, Dave the Diver, controls smooth as butter, and exploring the underwater areas, finding treasure, and catching fish is some of the most fun I've had with water in a video game in recent years. The swimming isn't sluggish or imprecise, all the combat controls are quick and responsive, and not to mention the visuals are all super well done, and I think the pixel art style and the animations really do wonders for making the water look absolutely beautiful. So what was all of this schizophrenic rambling about? Well, I think the main point of it is that while it can be a bit of an inconvenience at times, water in video games really does bring a lot more to the table than we give it credit for. It's a versatile tool in storytelling, world building, and atmosphere, and it can shake up the gameplay in interesting ways if done well by adding new mechanics and enemies to overcome. And maybe the biggest draw is that it's extremely versatile in its use cases. There's a water area for almost every mood. Need a comfy game? There's a water area for that. Feel like being scared? There's quite a few of those too. Do you just want some gorgeous eye candy? The list goes on for that too. Each of these cases can be incredibly immersive and engaging, so while there's some bad examples of water in video games, I think there's plenty more good ones that are just under the surface. Thank you for watching. Hi there, thank you for watching until the end of this video. If you enjoyed it and you want to leave a like and subscribe, I would appreciate that a ton. Comments are always welcome as well. Do you have a favorite or least favorite water area in a video game? Let me know down below. Also, this is the first announcement of the Meaty Community Discord server, name pending. I should be done setting that up by the time this video goes live, so if you want to join that, you can. I'll post video-related announcements, maybe some memes, just generally trying to be in touch with the community there. That'll be in the description if you're interested. If you really like my content, consider checking out the Patreon link in the description. That'll be down there just below the rest of my socials if you want to follow any of those, but no pressure. I'm just happy you clicked on this video. Thank you to NDH for your Patreon support. You help me continue making these goofy videos, and I appreciate it a ton. And thank you to everyone else once again for watching this video. I hope you all have a good one, and I'll see you next time.